it's real. And they could need those. That's the main one. And they really have good need those. Mishum Kagamat in Chazal Sheish Tam Chacham Seder Hanab Miyuchad B'Chol Yachlitos. The Ram says, Tam Chacham, you know Tam Chacham? He has a special Seder, how to act. You can't just act any way you want. The Ram says in Perikei, Perikei Deus, Tzar Shem Yikra B'Mayzim Achol Mashkei. Tam Chacham, he's recognizing on the way he acts when he's eating or drinking. He has to eat in a different way, he's more refined. He like a grub and shake some other people. It doesn't matter. This person's wearing the Kesser Shtai. Basis Rachel, he goes to the bath. When he sees this way he walks, not which one is clothing. In the culture of the order of Master Matana, when he does business, everything has to be different. There's only king's crown. He has to act in a more refined way. You call Maisim, everyone knows who can't be those. His Maisim have to be pleasant, fixed up again. Good needles, the Kavanas, the Hatam Kamon, using this, or no say who. This person wearing the crown of office is acting differently. And if you don't, then the Kesser shouldn't be in your head.
High school, I remember a kid that used to hang out with you because he was ugly. You go and get the leftovers.
Yeah, very fun.
That's a third that you appreciate. Oh, God.
Thank you.
Any of these?
Thank you very much.
I just want to thank the Parnas Hayom, the Glock and the Gel family, in memory of the members of the Simlu Solvanier Tasnad ghetto were murdered in Yud Aleph Sivan, Auschwitz. Neshama should have Li and Hashem Yukim Dom. Okay. We're on page Reish Ayin Gimel, Batam Darkecha, Hargoshes Ha'or. We're going to this mimer runs right into the next one, which is sort of a hemshich of this. So we've been learning about Hergeshim in Avodas Hashem, and here's what we're going to discuss today. Is where it gets a little bit tricky about how authentic these emotions are, and how much, whether or not we can trust these emotions are coming from a real place or not. So on page Veshayin Gimel, the last paragraph on the page, where it says Nisbach. This whole avodah that we've been talking about, to feel the or of Hashem, the lahagish dveikus bo, he avodah pnimis. It's an avodah pnimis. So the chitzonius, when it comes to this avodah of hagoshes, can be a person's shuckling a lot, shaking the head and closing the eyes, and all kinds of physical gestures, and how a niggin goes and how a rikud goes and so on. And there are other ways that a person's inner emotions can be expressed externally. The question is how much of this should take place. Are the gedarim when it comes to this? What comes first, the feelings and then the physical external movements, or perhaps through these chitzonistic things that one can come to pneumonia. So it's not so clear, and you'll see even here it's not clear. There's no clear gedarim when it comes to this type of balance. In general, the tzaddikim, especially from certain Batam Darkecha, by the tzaddikim, Shishcha and Kotzk is famous, and others by the Balamusa, that they were very, very careful when it came to that equation between what's inside and what's outside. And that a person has to be very honest and very real, and there are other Batam Darkecha. There's one in particular by the Chassidim where the davenings was screaming and yelling, and I know Chassidim from that, wonderful friends and Talmidim from that Chassidus who have shared with me how they enjoy so much when they're away a little bit that they take a daven quietly and like, you know. So what does that mean? So obviously there are those who believe that that's part of the avodah, is to awaken oneself through the screaming. There are others who would say that if you're not feeling that, then you should just daven quietly. If it's not coming spontaneously, if it's not spontaneous, then what are you doing? So this is back and forth with different. You see this by different tzaddikim, even in Chabad. There's the whole way of avoid in Chabad, and there's that generation after the Alter Rebbe, after the Baal Tanya. So he had his son, Tzaddik Yisod Alon, the Mittler Rebbe, Skuski Aleinu, and he had his greatest Talmud, was Rabbi Listra, and the Mittler Rebbe davened came out in silence and stillness, and Rabbi Listra was jumping all over like the Bedicheva. He was like all over the place. So they all came from the Baal Tanya. So what was the Baal Tanya? So this is not clear. It's not easy. Everybody agrees that the ideal is certainly not the chitzonius. That's not the ideal. Not to show all of one's feelings with movements and so on. Page Ayin Dalad Reish. Kikoach ha'argosha u'kamo chaim ha'esh. These emotions are like the chom, the warmth of a fire. Shekichol shehu otzer yoser. The more it's kept inside, chumis rabbe, then the greater it is. Vilu kasher hu yotzer hachutza. But when it goes out, hu nachlash, it cools off. I've told you a number of times over the years that there's a story by the Ostrovitz, who was a guy in the tzaddik, but his father was a baker. His father was a baker, and then Pashat Yid, a simple Jew. But the Ostrovitz was the biggest of all the rabbis, and I've told you that there were tzaddikim that were sitting together at a table, and they were nowhere close to who the Ostrovitz was, his learning and his madrigas. And they were talking about their own yichus. This one's an anical from this rabbi, this one's from that rabbi. They're all talking about their yichus. And it was to get to the Ostrovitz who didn't have an yichus at all. So when it came time, they were going around and they were all looking at the officer, like, who are you? Well, they were jealous of him. Who are you? And the officer said that my father, was an Ehrlich Yid, he was a baker. And I used to help him in the bakery. And he would say to me, Yechiel, he says, be careful to keep the oven door closed. Because when the oven door is closed, it stays hot. And if you open up the oven too much, there's no heat left in it. And he was talking about them opening their mouths. Right? You open up your mouth too much, nothing is left inside. He said, that's what I learned from my father, to keep the oven door closed. So, you have to be careful. And that's what he's saying here. It's like fire. The more it's kept inside and guarded, the stronger the fire becomes when it's kept inside. Therefore, like the Gemara tells us that Rabbi Akiva, when he was by himself, when he would daven by himself, he would be running around and jumping all over the place. Rabbi Akiva. But when he was with the tzibur, he'd daven with the tzibur. It says he was misarech. Rabbi Akiva was misarech. He davened very, very long, but when he was together with the tzibur, he davened with the tzibur. When the oven door is open, so the fire gets weaker. So the chitzonius, the chitzonius weakens the actual hagashas. Again, that's not always the case, but that's in general. The klal is that to the degree that the chitzonius can help the pnimius and serve the purpose of the pnimius, so that's when we use the chitzonius. Then it has some place and has value. The chitzonius is helpful in some way, and even then one has to be careful. You go when we were in yeshivas, there were guys that did crazy tnuas, and it becomes something which draws attention, and it's silly, draws attention. So one person has to be with seichel how to do these things. So when the chitzonius is something that helps the pnimius, the problem is when chitzonius becomes the ikar. When the externalities becomes the most important thing, that becomes the main thing, chitzonius, which has to do also with how a person, with the levushim and all the chitzonius. Again, chitzonius is important. It plays a role, but only to the extent that it serves the pnimius. So when it comes to a person's malbushim, if it's a matter of kavod Shabbos, and a person to dress to be mechabed Shabbos, and it creates a certain atmosphere in the home, to dress a certain way at the Shabbos table, and on Shabbos bechlal, and kavod tefillah, and how to dress with it. There are other people that say, no, I'm a completely pneumistic person, so I'm going to come to shul barefoot, and in a t-shirt and so on. So that's also not. There are extremes this way and that way. Chitzonius does have, and we see that halacha is concerned with kavod tefillah. Halacha is concerned with the kavod of Shabbos, the dinim of kavod, to be a mechubadik person. And the Gemara says that the malbushim, the clothing of a person, or the kavod of a person. And on the other hand, but to take it, very, very, very much to extreme, and to plop some malbush on a kid, when the kid's bechlal feels very, very distant from it and doesn't want to have a shaykhis to it. That's also so. These are hard things to measure, but one cannot say that the chitzonius is nothing. That's wrong. It's not true. Chitzonius is not nothing. On the other hand, to make chitzonius into the ikar, the main thing is how you dress and how you look and your outward and external tnuas and so on. That's for sure not true. That's for sure not the ikar. And the Kotzker said, he had a distaste for a lot of the chitzonistic things. The Kotzker, it's his whole union Kotzker and Pshiska was emes, was truth. And he said that his whole tachlis, all he ever wanted was to be able to go to the top of a mountain, and with 9 other Jews, and he said to wear a basket on his head. We should all be wearing like baskets on our head and scream out Hashem Elokim. That's all he said. To wear baskets on our head, not strimbels, not spudics, just to wear baskets on the head. He was making fun of what had become in many of the Chassidish Chatzeros, that the emphasis on the Chitzonius and the fire was getting weaker and weaker as the externals were getting more and more important, and the fire was getting weaker and weaker. וכלל, חיצוני צריך לשרס הפנימיות. ואז יש לו מקום וערך. כשנעשה העיקר, זה עיבוד האמס. When the chitzonius becomes the ikr, becomes the main thing, then it's the loss of truth. It's ibud ha'emes. And then it's already, and a person is living in a place that's not truthful at all. Shtei panim. Yesh b'shimush hanochen b'chitzonius shel hargoshes, kigon tnuos v'abos panim chadayim. But there are 2 aspects to this use of the proper use of chitzonius, such as movements and so on, and facial expressions. Aleph. Kasher halev hapnimi mole b'hargasha. When a person is feeling within oneself, the heart is filled with emotion. As harbe pamim zemizbate me'elav. And many times, the external thing, the movements and so on, just happens on its own. That's a madregu, but it happens on its own. It's mizbate me'elav. It's not manufactured. It's not artificial. It's authentic. It's real. It's just an outgrowth of what's going on inside. So some of the fire comes out. Gamachitzaynis. Zedavatov. That's a good thing. Zedavatov. Ki zemor shahargasha kol kach chazaka, because that means that the fire, the inside is so strong, ad shehi mashpia afilo al guf, ad kedei kach, that as ashpah, it affects the guf. And the whole Indian that we shackle, that the shackling when we daven, of moving, of course, is brought down the remez in the pasuk. David Melch said, "Kol atzmosei tamarna Hashem yikamocha." No, that's not from Tehillim. It's the Nishmas, right? Kol atzmosei tamarna Hashem yikamocha. All of my atzom is kol atzmosei, my body. The body has language too, and when there's a fire that's inside, and it's not contained completely inside, it comes out. That my all of my limbs, my body is screaming out. So that's a very chashuv thing when it just happens on its own. He says that's zedavatam. Here the neshama is almost forcing the guf to be mishtatev. The neshama is pushing the guf to be involved in this feeling, in this avodah. And that's a very, very great thing. But sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes it could even be on the cheshbon of something that's real. Sometimes he says that the bimkom, rather, the shahargosha apnimis instead of the hargosha apnimis tischazik od v'od, as adam mistapik b'hargosha sheyesh lo. Instead of increasing the volume inside, instead of working on the fire growing inside, the person is mistapik b'hargosha sheyesh lo. He's not working very hard on the flame getting stronger inside. He said it's enough, but umiyad ma'isi oisachutza. But he right away, he lights up outside. He shows the outside lights, and it's not necessarily with the intention to impress people. I'm not talking about someone that's trying to make a scene. It's just that instead of being more focused inwardly, he's less inward, and and he just lets go with some outward expressions of emotion, and that's on the cheshbon of what's inside. Again, that's opening the oven door, and the oven didn't get to the place where it's really hot enough. It should have been warmer inside, and by opening the door, so we were talking about. I was talking about on Shabbos and Shavuos, that the meaning of Vayanu. It says that when it came to Har Sinai, there were people who says Vayanu. They were trembling, but it says Vayamdu Mirachok. They stood from far away. So the Koska said, and other tzaddikim said that even though they were trembling, they were still far away. It says Vayanu. It says when it came to Har Sinai, Vayanu, they were shuckling. There's a lot of shuckling, but they were still Vayamdu Mirachok. They were standing far away. What he's saying now is that sometimes to those Vayanu, through the tnuas, through the movements, that's Vayamud Merachok, it causes you to be further away. It doesn't bring you closer. It just has the opposite effect. You could have gotten closer if you would have stayed more inside, if you'd have been thinking more, if you'd been working on his brightness more, that would have made the oven hotter. But you opened up the door, and as a result, there's some external tnuas, but the inside cools off. Miyad maitzi oisa achutza. To immediately bring this outside. There's a garm shehilot tischazik. So that causes the feelings not to get stronger. And many times it could even get weaker. This has to do also, like we always learn, when it comes to shirim, to learn the marshal and the nimshal, and the nimshal is what we're talking about here first. But when it comes to relationships between people as well, I from my father, I heard a number of occasions him express a distaste for how Americans. He heard this a few times with Americans, and I've mentioned this over the years, that they'll be on the phone and they're hanging up with a kid and they'll say, "I love you." To my father, it was like it's the strangest thing. And my father was a person who had a very, very deep and abiding fire inside of love for the family and for Yiddishkeit and so on. But he was from that mahalach of keeping the oven door closed. That's how he was, to keep the oven door closed. So he also, when he was able to have him here, and guys would come over to him and start making something to my father. It was like from another planet. Even though they're saying nice words to him, his mahalach was that you say to another person, "Shalom Aleichem," and the answer is Aleichem Shalom. That was the end of it. It's unbelievable to see you, Mr. Weinberger. He's such an inspiration. He was like. And the last few years when he was in Farquhar and in the Stiebel, they were so nice to him, and the kids would come over, and Rabbi Bento was bringing over all the boys to come to my father for brachas. So the whole thing to him was so they would come to my father, they put their heads down. My father would give a little thing and say, "Like a little push, and have a good day. You should learn good." That was it. The whole thing of external, and his brother, Yitzchak Itzu, was the same way. All the externalities, but there was never, ever, ever for a second a doubt in any of our minds, the kids, that my father's love was unbelievable, was infinite. There was never, ever a suffix in our minds at all. But the oven door was closed, and he lived always in that world. I was just thinking so much about it because Shavuos night in the shul by us, so there was it was the people learning, and it was socializing, there was everything going on, and they didn't have hot. It was just like watermelon and stuff, but it was like a lot going on. It was all in this one room, and in the corner, all the way in the corner, it was just my father sitting the whole night with his tikkun, saying tikkun Shavuos, didn't budge, didn't move. Whole night he's saying tikkun. He wouldn't know. He tried to disappear in the corner, and that was it. And then he looked across the room at the other corner. Was his father? Was his friend Faisha? And like she was on the other end, sitting in the corner with this thing, without the watermelon, without the this, without the that, and just a certain style, of a certain way, how they were raised like that. But there were people with very deep emotions. I grew up with them. There were people with big hearts and deep emotion. But the oven door was shut. Now that doesn't necessarily work for everybody. But there was it seems there was more of a style like that in the earlier years. Maybe in different places, I don't know, because they're all different types. But there was this Indian of, even when it came to Ben Al Chavera. So my father didn't like that. Somebody gets off the phone. I love you. I said, what is that? What is that? I love you. To him, that was a very, very deep thing, love. And the word is a very expensive word. And you don't drop it like the way you would say, sei gesund. I love you. It's just the way it became cheap. And there's that was very, to a certain extreme. They're just saying that that's what I saw by him and by other Jews from that world. And there are other types, but this is one. He's saying you have to be careful. Tzarich lizarbazim, unless rakis bepnimius. The ikar inyan is the pnimius. I remember once, I was in a very from stage, and I was davening next to my father on Shani Yom Kippur. I was next to my father, and I was giving the big, I was doing the big yeshiva shakel, and my father just, in the middle of Shonesh, my father just glared at me. I'm like, I know, man, stop it. Stop it. It's a tzaddik, you just stop quietly and take it easy. I was always worried and wondering, like, when he came here to daven, like Friday night and all the dancing, he grew over the years to sort of smile at it, but I knew that it wasn't his style. So then or we'd see a guy, like one of the guys that during the will get up and start doing something like that. I didn't go for that stuff. He had a fondness for all of it, but he thought it was silly. And it wasn't because when my father had tremendous love for tzaddikim, and we would go to tzaddik and see a tzaddik, then he was very nispal from it. But he just didn't feel that regular people, not madrega, that they have to be jumping around and carrying on. He didn't go for it. I mean, we spoke about it once or twice, and he never really answered me. I would try to explain, this type of vitamin. He was just going, okay. Like, if it makes them happy, okay. It's not against it. It's not for me, But there were times I remember that when we had the shul dinner in the sands, and it was the last times that he was really able to be outside, and I remember that we did a rekud together. I was dancing with him, and the fire came out, and I never saw him like that. It was like red, and it was very, very. I don't remember when it was like that. But when it was there, it was 100%. It wasn't anything that wasn't real about it. So that's what he's saying here. That there doesn't have to be extremes. But tzarich lizarbazim, l'shrakis b'pnimis. Of course, the ikar is that a person should be an ish pnimi, to be a pnimistic person, to be a person. Ba'ofen shachitzanias tov rak ba'ofen shlo mimela mamish. The highest madrega is when the chitzanias happens. It's not. It's something that just comes out. Melosha hargosha atzma teitzei achutza. And that's the ikra. And he gives the example in Taf Pei Gimel of the pot on the fire. Mashal asir in the footnote. Mashal asir ha'omed al ha'esh, like a pot that's on the fire. Shem paischim es amachas. If you take off the cover, yetzu edim lechutz, then the steam comes out. Chaim hasir yerid, and then the heat of the pot goes down. Therefore, you keep it closed. And that way it gets hotter. So then when the fire is felt outside, but it's in a way of mimela. Not that the fire itself goes out, but the warmth of the fire comes out. And that's navoda in pneumias. It's brought down in this farm that the Baal Shem HaKadosh when he was asked, well, what is it that he changed? What's the difference? What is he trying to do? So this person that asked him, an outside person, the Baal Shem HaKadosh said that a marshal that there was a silversmith, and he had an apprentice, a young guy that was working, that he was teaching the malacha, and they made beautiful things, and there was some choshev, a nobleman, some parish that wanted to have a big job, and he needed somebody good, and he came to this silversmith, and the silversmith said, "My guy is fantastic. You take him back to your whatever. Take him to the palace. He's good. He could do good work and take the materials and whatever." So the apprentice, the young fellow, went, and then short time, he came back, and his Rebbe asked him, "How did it go?" He said, "The guy's very angry. It was terrible." He said, "What happened? I spent so much time teaching you. So what happened?" So he said, So the Rebbe asked him, "Did you take this? You took that? You had this, the materials?" He said, "Sure." So, and did you put everything in the oven? Did you put it in the oven? He said, "Oh no, I forgot to put it in the oven." So the Baal Shem HaKadosh said, "I'm not coming to change anything. It's the same Shulchan Aruch, Tzitzis, Tefillin, Shabbos, same program. Just put it into the oven." That's what he said. Put it into the oven. It's a marshal from the Baal Shem. Put it into the oven, but into the oven. That's the avodah. But when it comes out, it has to be careful.
Right. So he's speaking about Chitzonius vis-a-vis Pneumius. Interesting. It doesn't seem to talk about sort of like I think would be more of a Renachman perspective, where Chitzonius is itself an avodah. Several Torahs he talks about what you are accomplishing by clapping, by singing, by dancing.
Yeah.
Not just simply how does this either express or again.
Beis. Amnam yesh pa'amim. Right. The author of this Sefer is a Breslover. Beis. Amnam yesh pa'amim. There are times shalev lo margish v'azarach leikanis machitzonius el hapnimius. That's what the tzaddikim are talking about, right? There are two ways. There's the order of Aleph Beis, right? The order of Aleph Beis is as you grow the hargoshes. That's the way we're talking about until now. The oven's getting hotter and hotter and hotter, and then you get from Aleph till Saf. So you see some of the tefillas like Ashrei, they're in the order of Aleph Beis, right? And then when you look, there are other tefillas that are in the order of what? Tashrak. Tav, Shin, Reish, right? So then the order of Tashrak. So what we've been talking about until now is Aleph Beis, which is Lechachi, is Aleph Beis. What Rabbi Nachman and the tzaddikim are talking about this avodah, what I mentioned before, like you see by Stalin, by Karlin, that the tzaddikim there have the thing with screaming and yelling and so on. They didn't mean stomp to scream. That can also become just a chitzonius. The tzaddikim meant this way. That what? Yesh pam shalev lo margish. Sometimes the heart's not feeling. Sometimes it's just cold. Forget about an oven. It's just cold. Sometimes you have to begin with the chitzonius to get warmed up. You have to get warmed up. So sometimes that way, and that's what they're talking about. But Rabbi Nachman spoke about clapping, which is a very big avodah by him. He had in both ways, but it was never that the tachlis is to stand around clapping. The tachlis is always besides in and of itself what he saw with the right hand and the left hand and so on. It's that he had in every single tnua there's deep meaning, but he was never ever talking about stam, being a gragger or something. He was talking about an avodah in chitzonius. That's an avodah in chitzonius. And the tachlis of that is that it should be mashpia on the pneumius and make tikkunim in the world, whatever those tikkunim are. But to make those tikkunim, breathing and with movements and so on, with the rikudim, with the clapping, But the tachlis was to bring about pneumistic change. That's many of the tzaddikim spoke about that. Then he says, that's a famous sentence from the Sefer HaChinuch. That the order of Tashrak is that through the maisim, through the actions, you can awaken the pneumius. Through doing something. So repeating an act of kindness also can affect a person to become a kinder person. Even though you might be doing this without any feeling at all, you're helping, you're doing, and you're not really into it, but the external actions have a very big effect upon the pneumius. And the Sefer Chinuch uses that many times with the mitzvahs. That how he's explaining the mitzvahs, how by doing something externally, even though you don't feel anything, but through that there's hashpah in the way of tashrak, that through the guf, because of this connection between the guf and the neshama, that sometimes it begins with the neshama and goes out to the guf, and sometimes you begin with the guf and it goes into the neshama. But again, that equation, he says, you have to be careful with that equation. But it certainly is true that that by doing something, by the guf becoming involved, it can bring out the neshama. It can bring the neshama. It could get the fire going inside.
Even though at times it becomes routine, meaning
that's the problem.
Right, so
that's the problem.
When you take something on, and then
the thing itself becomes just another routine. Correct. Like I personally don't understand why guys walk around all day in gartels. When you go to from neighborhoods, you see guys walking around. Chassidim that they're going with the stroller with the gartel, they're going shopping at the gartel. Now, the tzaddik probably means that you should have God in mind when you're in the stroller and when you're in the store. But then it just becomes another. It could just as easily be a baseball cap. Guys walking around with the gartel. I'm not making fun of that. I'm just, and they have something. I'm not making fun of it. God forbid. But it becomes like it becomes something that's just another thing that you do.
And should that person continue doing it? Meaning they took it on initially because it was a freshness or whatever, they had a pure intention, and then it became a routine. So at that point, do they continue doing it? So it becomes, or do they stop because it?
I guess every person's different. It's hard to say a klal, because sometimes it is important to keep that up in order to maintain a certain place. It's hard to say, but oftentimes it should be dropped, and there should be look for a way for schachas and something different, and something new to find the schachas. But again, this has nothing to do with conforming to the, let's say there's a chassid that he has a chassidus and he has a rebbe, so he has to conform to, and I'm not suggesting chalila that somebody do something different, not to conform to what the chassidus says he should do and all of that. I would never suggest such a thing. But he has to follow what his rebbe tells him, and that's what they do. And that's what the rebbe wants. Then, but I do think that it would be good for him to have a conversation with his rebbe and to say to the tzaddik that Rebbe, I'm walking around my whole life with a gartel. I really don't know what I'm doing. Should I be changing diapers in a gartel? Should I be, arguing with the guy in the grocery with my gartel on, or maybe I should be thinking about something different or try something new. But it's not often that someone will actually think about that or discuss it. But I think it certainly deserves a conversation with the Rebbe. But again, to be part of something, there's value in that as well, and holding on to the externalities. But it's way exaggerated. The less panemius, the more chitzonius. And that's why when I was talking about my father a little bit, the old Hasidim, it was much less on the outside and much more on the inside. That's why they didn't care. They didn't care. My father couldn't care less about what a guy looked like. I said he couldn't care less. It made no difference to him if you walked into him and you were wearing a 5-foot spudik, or you were some kid wearing a bathing suit with the tzitzis on top of his body. My father looked at him the same way. He might tell him, why don't you get dressed? But he didn't think of him as less of a Jew or more of a Jew. It was no inyan with this at all. And he saw by the old Hasidim, there was much. That's what the Kotzker said, to wear a basket on his head. He was making fun. And now the chitzonius is when there's the pneumius is much less than it used to be. Of course, there are many wonderful exceptions, but the pneumius is much less. So the chitzonius has become. That's why you've watched. That's why we watched. You're watching the Stromels getting bigger and bigger, right? You've seen this. The Stromels are getting. It's like they're alive. You see how the Stromels are growing bigger and bigger and bigger. Look at it. What?
Like them with the brush.
Yeah. I wanted to get one for Eretz Yisrael, to have one in Yerushalayim, so I shouldn't have to always go with the plane, schlepping the Stromel. I wanted to have a Stromel in Yerushalayim. That was, to me, it was an important thing to keep a Stromel in Yerushalayim. It's sort of my way of making sure I get back. I got my Stromels in the closet, and I wanted to have it there. But I also didn't want to spend. I didn't want to spend much money on this thing. So I went to Borough Park, and I asked around. Some of my friends was a good Stromel macher. So Moshe Shapov sent me his son sent me to a place, and I could not get a Stromel without like the spikes on top. I couldn't, and I could not, like I don't know, some of you were here a long time ago, I had my old Stromel, which was like this thin, which already at that point, it was getting, for my wife and family, it was getting a little bit embarrassing, and some of the guys got me a new Stromel, but I asked that it should be as little as possible. But now you see they make these for the chasadim, these Stromels, they can't walk into the room. You got to take it off to get through the door. To me, it looks crazy. It looks crazy. I'm not talking Spudik. And yeah, they wear Spudik. That's something. I'm talking about the Stromel, regular Stromel. They became crazy. And then that's what you'll see in the magazines. They have a model with a Stromel. Can you imagine? Like showing the Kotzker such a picture. The guy. With that, he's gonna think of that look. With the Stromel, and it became a fashion. So what happened to it? So it's like so much of the other things in our Shabbos and our lives, and that became very, very much chitzoniistic thing. With the lower pneumius is the higher the Stromel. I'm not saying that, God forbid, that every person who wears a big Stromel doesn't have pneumius. Of course, I'm not saying that. Chas v'shalom. But you see that it became an inyan. The revolution became an inyan. Used to be that only a Rebbe would wear a bekish that has all kinds of colorful things going on and all loud bekishes, and it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. The Chitzonis became so big in the Pnimis, much less. For us, Adarabah Chitzonis Meshameshes is a Pnimis, but sometimes, and that's what Rabbi Nachman, at the point that Aryeh raised, it's true. You see the Tzaddikim talking about this, that there are times that the Chitzonis is serving the purpose of the Pnimis, and that's a good thing. Again, in a normal way. But the Chitzonis helps the Pnimis. And by using a more of a forceful external expression of Ruchnius, it helps the Pneumius. Like shuckling stronger. Davening out loud. A lot of the tzaddikim, they spoke about the importance of trying to daven out loud. And again, for some people that works very well, for others it doesn't. And each one should respect the other one. For some people, the davening out loud. I remember there was a bacher many years ago that he wanted, how come I never pushed everybody that they should daven louder and louder and louder? I said that everybody should daven louder that they like to daven. It's not a thing that you should daven louder. That daven has to be that way. That you need to stand around, everybody to stand around screaming. For some people, it works better for them when they daven quietly. For other people, it works better for them when they daven b'kol. And each one should be machshav the other one's avoided. It's not it has to be my way. It doesn't have to be your way. He has his own way of davening. See, he davens his way. In certain places where there's more of a kol, the poskim said the kol, the voice, using a loud voice, is very effective in being mo'over the ruchnius, the pnimius, the neshama. And it oftentimes is a very, very good thing to try to daven louder. To try to daven louder because there is a direct connection between the kol and the neshama. There is a connection. So the Sfarim tell us that a person should try to do that at least from time to time to daven the kol more. But you see, when it comes to the highest part of davening is Shemoneh Esrei. It's the highest part of davening. That's Atzilus. When you're in Shemoneh Esrei, you're in the highest world. By Shemoneh Esrei, Davke, still, silent. It's a higher madrega. The inyan of the kol to be ma'ora, so by psukkah de zimra, to be ma'ora, and so on. But the highest madrega is kol de mamadaka. Lo barash Hashem, lo be'esh, lo barash, lo beruach, kol de mamadaka. And everybody's different. And each person has to know his own tava to try to be as authentic as possible. That's all. Davening out loud. So they teach the children. So in Cheder they teach the children. They try to get the children to scream out the psukim, to scream out the davening. They don't know what they're talking about. But you walk into the Cheder and it's so cute and you see the kids all shuffling and screaming out. Shvei, they're screaming. And when you walk in Yerushalayim, you can hear them. You can hear them from all the Chadarim, the children screaming out loud, and that's we have a Masorah like that because you want them to engage and even though the kids don't know what they're talking about, but they feel there's a chash of a thing. They feel there's a chash of a thing, and it's something that, of course, as they mature, they're supposed to. The tachlis is to work more on the pnimius. Less on the chitzonius. But there are times where the pnimius is serving the purpose, the chitzonius is serving the purpose of the pnimius, and he says, "Shimush tov b'chitzonius." Mitach rotzen leftach is pnimius. When the person uses chitzonius in order to strengthen the pnimius, then it's a valuable tool in one's avodas Hashem. And it has to. That's what I was saying before about being mechabed Shabbos. And you see that the Rishonim and the Poskim make a big deal when it comes to the Pesach Seder to put out all your beautiful stuff on the table, right? To make it a beautiful table. It's to be more a feeling of what? Of being B'nei Chara. Of being a Ben Chara, being a free person. So there's something to be said for that. There's something to be said for that. And we see the tzaddikim, like by the Rishna, by the tzaddikim from that Beis HaMedrash of the Rishna, that there was a big inyan of the chitzonius. No, the tzaddikim were very, very much against that. They were upset with that. The whole part of the Indian was between sons, and between and religion was had to do with this Indian of the wealth and the chitzonius, and of course the vision had a cheshbon with that. It was a very deep cheshbon of the chitzonius and what to do and how to use that chitzonius to strengthen the feeling within a Jew of being malchus, being the ben melech, because after being for 1,000 years being beaten and kicked and so on, the original said enough of this, and he wanted to create a sense of malchus. But that was by the Rebbe. So does that mean that everyone in the Chassidim is supposed to live in a palace, and how it's supposed to be, and what the equation is of inside and outside? By the original was so there. You know that inside of his he wore golden slippers, but then they would see blood coming out because he put pieces of glass inside. So he wore golden slippers. So that's what you saw on the outside was gold. But inside the slippers there was glass. So that was not by regular Hasidim. They just wanted to wear gold slippers. So it was not about. It was about something much deeper than the outside. So again, there is great value to the externals. But two things. First of all, one should pay attention to the mitzvah of appearing in front of other people as somebody who's normal, not somebody that's strange, and that's not a mitzvah to appear strange to other people. It's not mechazik the Yiddishkeit. It could very often make them think that Yiddishkeit, to be frumen, is something which is odd and strange. It has to be done with seichel and cheshbon, and that it's for the tachlis of bringing about a strengthening of pneumias, not stam to make a scene. Certainly never to show off to impress other people that he's not even talking about that. That's not part of the cheshbon over here to make a show. That's absolutely not part of the cheshbon to make a show. He's only talking about the person himself, chitzonis and pnimis, making a show. There's nothing to. But as a tool of strengthening one's pnimis, chitzonis could be very important, and therefore. Rikudim and the rikud to build up through the rikud, like Rabbi Nachman says, and Rabbi Nosson says, you pull the person doesn't dance, but you pull him in, and you start to push him that he should dance a little bit, and you'll see that after he's dancing for 2 or 3 minutes, he starts to get into it. So you see that there's a hashpah, that the rikud, that even though when he began he didn't even want to dance, and he was pulled into the dance. He didn't want to dance, but you pulled him in. The guys pulled him into the dance. And then by the time the dance is finished, he's dancing more than everybody, because it built. Because he's that kind of a person that's somehow through the rikud, through the dancing, it built up the fire of the pneumius. There is such a thing that you see that by people. Everybody has a different tava. Everybody's different, but there should never ever be that one person looks at another person. How come he's doing like this? Everybody's different. They should each person should find his own way, but in general, not to make a spectacle of oneself. The tzaddikim did not look highly upon making a spectacle of oneself.
Right. There was a story of the Scheinberg that he used to wear all the tzitzis. So one of his talmidim said to me, "I come on all these chumras, and he didn't do chumrah. I'm thinking of wearing a few pairs of tzitzis."
I'm thinking of what?
I'm thinking of putting on a few pairs of tzitzis.
Oh, you want to imitate
Scheinberg and said, "Why can't you just be normal?"
Why can't you be normal? Even though he himself wore 70, 80 pairs of... Yeah, that was Rav Scheinberg and his avoda from the time that he was a boy and a young man, and with each part of himself there was another tal's cotton, whatever that was. Nobody knew what that was. But there was another tal, he didn't speak about it, but there was another tal's cotton, as opposed to somebody that's coming to him and saying, I'd like to wear a lot of tzitzis. Just be normal. What's the matter? It's not enough for you to have one pair of tzitzis. Just try to work on the tzitzis that you have. A lot of times the people that are looking for this stuff, the next week they're not wearing any tzitzis at all. It's just a certain type of personality that they thrive on the chitzanias, and that everything is based on the chitzanias, and then there was never anything really much in the pneumias, and they're just looking to do more theatrics, and this is like a. I told you I had this guy that came to me once, many years ago, and I had a lot of issues, a lot of inyanim. A sweet guy, but a lot of inyanim, a bacher. And he came to tell me that it was before Rosh Hashanah, he was doing a lot of thinking about, what's going on in his life, and he decided that he wanted to ask me what I thought, but he decided he wanted to change something in his life and do something, for this coming year. And I was very excited listening to this. And I said, what do you? So he said, he bought a gargle. I said, how much did it cost? He said, like $6. I said, that's what you're talking about for Rosh Hashanah? So he said to me, but you wear a gargle. Like you don't believe in gargles? You wear a gargle. So I said, no, I believe in gargles. I think it's a good thing in gargle. But I was all excited because I thought you're telling me, you're going to stop screaming at your mother. You're going to start coming to shul. Like I thought we were going to talk about something, and I'd be inspired by, But $6, $5.99 on sale. A gargle, a piece of string. That piece of string is very, very beautiful. It has very deep meaning. But that's not the Erev Rosh Hashanah shmooze. You want to put it on. Don't put it on. It's your business. But that's not what you should be thinking about Erev Rosh Hashanah. Whether you're wrapping yourself in a gargle. If that would be, after tremendous introspection, and you're going to wear the gargle and talk to your mother like a mensch, then that's something. I want to wear a gargle when I'm with my mother. Okay. But just now be another guy in shul that has a gargle on, for that, you don't have to waste $5.99, whatever it costs. That's not enough either. Because it should be something, it should be something which is real. Let's just finish the sentence. Sometimes there's a little bit of a feeling, but it's not strong. And then it is good to use a little bit of the chitzonius to get the pneumis burning a little bit more.